Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone can hear me.
Yes, I can.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Memoir, librarian from the National Library Board. It is my pleasure to welcome everyone today for the Time of Your Life Celebration 2020, organized in conjunction with the 10th anniversary of SUSS Gerontology Program and International Day of Older Persons. Silver Voices Writing Your Memoir workshop is organized for you to experience a journey of self-discovery. By the end of the session, you would have written some amazing pieces about your life story. As there will be writing exercises during the session, please prepare papers and pens. Before we start, let's walk through the house rules first. Please note that all participants are to stay muted during the presentation to ensure a conducive environment. If you wish to speak, you may use the raise hand function from your Zoom menu. Alternatively, if you prefer or do not have access to a microphone, the chat box is available for you to type your views for sharing. Here I will mention the basic Zoom functions. During the presentation, please ensure that you are muted. The microphone icon will have a red line across it. There will be time for sharing after the writing exercises. If you wish to speak to share feedback, please raise your virtual hand. The raise hand function is accessible by clicking on the participant's icon as shown, followed by the raise hand icon. Before you speak, please make sure that your background is quiet so that we can hear you clearly. Today, we have Mr. Shariman bin Elantris as our moderator of the session. Mr. Shariman is currently serving as a branch head at the SAF Center for Leadership Development in the Singapore Army. He has been with the force for 26 years. He is currently pursuing a master's in gerontology at SUSS. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Shariman to the session. Mr. Shariman, over to you.
Thank you, Mingwai. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to the Time of Your Life Celebration 2020 and the Singapore University of Social Sciences Gerontology Program 10th anniversary. The SUSS Gerontology Program was the first in Singapore, founded to meet the growing needs of the elder care sector in the country. The workshop for this morning is Silver Voices, Writing Your Memoir. Let me start by asking a few questions for you to ponder on. Do you dream of sharing your life story with others? Or to create a written record of your life and share them with your children and grandchildren? Or simply to preserve your memories, life experiences, and stories before too much time has passed? If the answer is yes to any of the questions, then you will definitely be in for a treat. It is my privilege to introduce our two guest facilitators today, Ms. Ambika Devi and Ms. Rusti Lehay. Ms. Ambika Devi is the founder of Mythologium Press and is an international award-winning best-selling author of 4 books. She is an astrologer, a meditation Jedi, a creative sexagenarian. She is passionate about guiding individuals to find inner peace, outward success, and a greater level of health and happiness. Ms. Devi has appeared on the Learning Channel, radio, and in periodicals as a relationship and communication expert. She has been teaching holistic health at the university level for many years. An eternal thirst for knowledge inspires her writing. Ms. Rusti Lahaye is the founder of WordQuest and is a facilitator of international writing groups, classes, and writing seminars. She lives to inspire as many writers as possible. The passion driving her evolved from the belief that we all have wisdom and a story to share. Ms. Lehay lives by the philosophy that if you've lived and breathed, you have a story. She coaches authors to find the words that their hearts speak. Working as an empath, she guides writers to open up to what their story is and the most authentic way for them to share it, helping them place the right words at the right time for all the right lessons. Now, Let's experience a journey of self-discovery together. Please join me to welcome Ms. Ambika Devi and Ms. Rusti Lehay.
Rusti, do you want to take that?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Sherman. That was wonderful. We're so happy to be here. So tonight we're going to speak about some things that will get you going on the writing. And trusting that first draft of yours is so very important, because that first draft, you're writing it for you. You're writing it on the page. You don't have to show it to anybody if you don't want to. It is yours to burn under the full moon or to flush down the toilet, although I really wish you wouldn't, because I really think that there's wisdom in that first draft. There is so much story that we all have to share. Structure and grammar and editing and content and flow development, that will all happen later. There's no need to worry about that in the first draft. So when you're trusting yourself, that first draft, the trick is to just keep your pen moving on the page, to just show up to that empty page and let it invite you in, and find a word or a phrase somewhere that you want to get going, or something that you know that you want to write. You can even start with recipes for grandchildren, or recipes that you want to pass down, recipes from your grandmother that you might want to preserve. It might even be written like my grandmother and my mother would write recipes, or they would tell me, your hand's not big enough. You have to do a hand and a half of raisins or a hand and a half of currants. That was the way that they cooked. And it brings life and vibrancy when we write these things down that are pertinent to our stories, our reality, and the way that it happened in our families, because we're all wonderful, unique beings on this planet with stories that are unique to our families, stories that are important to the people that come behind. And if we're writing for more than just our family, sometimes the things that we've experienced in life, we don't think they're special. I ask you to think again. Sometimes the questions that you are asked when you meet someone new, and you're excited about telling this story to someone new, that's a clue to that first draft that you want to put on the page. It's your story to write. I invite you to have fun with your words on the page, trust that first draft, and let it just burst out of you. Now, there is a science to writing by hand, which I strongly advise. I do both. I will often do a second draft on the computer, first draft by hand. There are sometimes I will do a first draft by computer because it's been bubbling around in here already. It's been bubbling around and I've been imagining writing it, and then it will just come out on the keyboard. But there is a science. There are things that are happening in our brain when we write down our arm, into our hand, onto the page. Dr. Caroline Leaf is interviewed by Tom Bilyeu on impact theory, and about 37 minutes into that, and I'll put that in the chat for everyone if you want to follow that up. About 37 minutes into the interview, she talks about the science of what's happening in the brain and names all the parts and the things that are firing and going on, and new development in our brain when we write by hand. I invite you to take time for yourself on the page and just write your stories. I'll turn it over to Ambika to add to that.
What I'd like to get you thinking about is that your story doesn't necessarily have to be in the structure of an autobiography of yourself. What I did with my first book, Lilith, is I set out to write a novel. And my publisher at the time said to me, your first book is always about you. So I really took that to heart. And then he hit me with, and it has to be a novel, which floored me. I thought, no way, there's no way I could write a novel. I was all set out to write a self-enrichment book. And what he did was he gave me prompts. He gave me ideas like Rusti and I will share with you this morning that triggered me into digging into my memories and writing about them in essay form. And after a while, these essays built up one upon the other, and I was able to arrange them into chapters. Now, I have to admit, though most of this book is about me, sometimes my stories were told or being acted out by other characters in the book. And sometimes I made up some stories. So not everything really happened, but what I really enjoyed doing is researching the area where the story took place, researching the history of certain buildings. And I did add in some of that factual information. So yes, the story is pretty much about me. And if you know me really well and read it, you will understand how the main character is really me. But if you know me even more, you'll understand how some of these other characters are telling part of my story, like a memoir. I feel like for me, it can get really overwhelming if I have to go from point A through point B to get to point C. And that's not me at all. So my technique for being able to go through this and get it all out is to simply just let it flow out and not judge it. As Rusti said just earlier, we don't have to worry about the grammar. We don't have to worry about organization. We don't even have to think this information is coming before this other set of information. But instead, we can just pour it all out of our arms, out of our pens, onto the page. And later, we can take sticky notes, or we could take actual pages and organize them out, mark them up, and begin to formulate them and mold them into what will be the cohesive finished product. It's really fun if you look at yourself like a fictional character. I think when we all look back at our lives, especially when we've had 6 decades of them, we have a lot of stories. And so it's our intention to start to trigger some of those for you today with the prompts and inspirations that we're giving to you. I'm really excited to hear what happens and what you share with us in the next hours, and how this gets you launched into inspiring what you will share as a legacy with people in your life, and also with people who have yet to meet you through the incredible medium of writing. It's a fabulous form of communication. And it's a way for us also to process things that have happened in our lives. And maybe sometimes it is easier to let another character tell that part of the story. So let yourself do that, and we'll see where this takes us.
Great stuff, Ambika. I don't write fiction, so I find Ambika's story absolutely fascinating. I write straight up reality, the way that it was, the way that it is. And there's a magic to that too. When we are able to be vulnerable on the page, it is so real and authentic. People and the reader will trust that. So that's also what I mean when I say show up on the page. Take a few risks. But this part here, I want to talk about how you're going to get the most out of the breakout rooms. After you do 5 minutes of rapid fire writing, keeping your pen moving, you're going to be able to give feedback to each other. And whether that's tonight or whether you create a writing group somewhere else in your life to be able to continue writing, I want you to be able to know how to give friendly reader feedback to others and to be able to train friendly readers in your life so that you are getting the feedback that will keep you writing. Julia Cameron, in the book The Artist's Way and the Right to Write, talks about when a reader gets friendly feedback, when an author gets friendly feedback, you are encouraged to keep on writing and the chafe will fall away. You might have one of those little darlings like Natalie Goldberg talks about. She's a great writer talking about writing, and I love her work if you want to get inspiration there too. She talks about how we just need to show up and keep on writing, like we've said already, but the feedback that you get will possibly make you aware, oh, I have a little darling that nobody commented on, nobody said they liked, nobody resonated with that. That might be a clue that needs to go. But nobody has to tell us that when we train a friendly reader. Nobody has to tell us what doesn't work. The ways that I want you to practice giving feedback to each other tonight in the group, and it'll also be rapid fire because we want to give, Ambika and I want to give you as much as possible in as short a time. So the way to give feedback is one of 3 ways. The first way is to say, I really liked, and then repeat something that the author said. The second way is to say, I want to hear more about this, and then say that, what you want to hear more about, because that tells the author that, oh, this other piece of the story that's in my head didn't end up on the page. And you're right, I know that, but the reader out here doesn't know it. And readers are greedy, let me tell you. They're greedy. They want to know it all. They really want to know it all. But they don't want you to spell it out so much that they feel like they're hit over the head and say, do you get it? Do you get it? They want to be able to solve a little bit of the mystery. So when a friendly reader says, I want to hear more about, they're curious, and it's a clue to you to add some more on the page, but add it with a little bit of mystery, a little bit of metaphor, and play with it. Have fun with how you add that on the page. The third way to receive friendly feedback and to be able to give it to your peers tonight in the breakout room is when you shared or read this, it made me think about this. Because one author's way of writing something can mean 10,000s of things to all the other readers out there. So it's a clue to you that your writing has more to offer other people than what you ever imagined when it makes somebody think about something that you never even imagined it would make them think about. So those are the 3 ways to give friendly feedback.
I want you also to really feel good about giving that feedback like Rusti just explained, because getting in the habit of doing that for each other can trigger ideas inside your own mind. So often, tell me, Rusti, I know this happens. We pass information back and forth in a group of writers. We share something and all of a sudden, boom, 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 all these stories are triggered in our minds and our hearts. And we start remembering our own stories because of an emotional moment. So anytime there's an emotional shift, a rise in emotion, happiness, any emotion, anger, frustration, that's a story. So let yourself begin to tune into that when you're listening to other people share, because this will help you keep going. I also would like to inspire you beyond today's session with ideas of how I keep things going when I'm writing. One of my favorite tools is my smartphone, because I can actually type in it or voice text. And there's a few different apps that I use. That way, whenever an idea happens, I can capture it and sync it up with my computers and I've got it. Therefore, when I'm out for a walk in the morning, which I do pretty much every day, I might be listening to an audiobook or some music or just nature around me, and something will trigger me. There was a time recently when a heavy rain had just happened, and I was walking along and locusts had fallen from the trees onto the ground, and I was listening to a poem by Yeats, and I got so inspired that I just whipped out a poem on my phone. It was amazing. And when I shared it with Rusti, she was really wowed by it. So I want you to realize that anything in your environment, anything that you feel and experience through any of your senses, whether it be sight, hearing, smell, taste, or touch, and allow those senses also to be heightened, because we have a super level of sensing. And then beyond that, what about dreams? I have gotten so many inspirations from dreams, and they actually took a big part in that very first book that I wrote, because I've been fascinated with them and listening to other people's dreams. Our dreams give us so much imagery that we can then take that and weave that into our stories. Or why not even talk about a dream that you had at some point, or a discussion about a dream. One of the things I really want you to feel encouraged and empowered with as we begin to head in to our first writing session is to just imagine right now that your hand is going to move and words are flowing out from your pen. Just acting as if, just tuning into it, just believing that when you sit down and see a blank page, you close your eyes, and when you blink, it's filled with your words, and that your ideas are valid. They're beautiful. They are full of feeling and description. And as you take in that feedback, I want you to feel in your heart, yes, I deserve this. I deserve this positive feedback. This is amazing. And this is inspiring me to continue on and keep going. I hope that I've now begun to trigger just a few ideas. And if they're flashing out right now, let them down on your page, even as we're talking. Let yourself, during this entire time we have together today, to write at any time. Let it be a scribble, a word, a phrase, or even a paragraph, but just let it keep going.
That was perfect, Ambika. The motivation that we all need to be able to put ourselves out on the page. And sometimes we wait a long time for that outside motivation, when really the place that we need it most is from ourselves. So I invite you, whenever you do any writing at all, write at the bottom of what you've written, well done, and your name. Well done, Jaraminda. Well done, Jenny. Well done, Simi. Well done, Dean. Well done, Peter. Well done, Jennifer. You get the point. Just write that well done in your name at the bottom, and you'll be surprised at how good that feels. Another thing you can do too, if you're not trusting that first draft, is to write it and put it away for 5 days and come back to it later. But here we go. Here are our first prompts to share tonight. I will put it in the chat for you here, and Ambika will put hers in. I will read it slowly. You're invited to write it down, invited to write down Ambika's. And whether or not you want to go with either one of those, it's totally okay to write whatever comes to you. My sister one time comes to a writing group, and I give out the prompts, and everybody loved what she wrote. She even liked what she wrote. I loved what she wrote. And she said, I didn't like any of the prompts you gave today. I went, can you explain that? Because everybody loved what you wrote. I loved it. She said, I know, I loved it too. She said the prompt didn't even feel like it was meant for her, but when she wrote it on the page and she took a word or a phrase or a sentiment, it really helped her go into what her body wanted to write anyway. And later on, the prompt didn't really show up. Maybe there was one word. So trust the prompts, trust the way that your pen wants to go. And my first prompt for this first writing breakout is 2 or 3 things I know for sure. And one of them is...
I love those dangling, hanging prompts. So my prompt for you is coming from my first book, Lilith, and it is this: you are the myth your ancestors told around the fire at night.
All right, so there's volunteers from SUSS, and Ambika and I will be in the breakout rooms with you, but these first 5 minutes, we invite you just to write, and then we'll pop into breakout rooms, and we'll see how you're doing, and we'll be there to answer some questions and help you give feedback, but I'm sure you can do that. And have fun, cut loose.
Enjoy.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, participants, we'll be sending you to the breakout rooms. If you see a prompt on your screen or your device to join the room, please do so. Thank you.
Welcome back to the big room, everyone. If you didn't have a chance to share this time around, please do make sure that you're the first. I'll just say that again for everyone as everyone's trickling back into the big room. If you didn't have a chance to share this time in the breakout room, please make sure that you're the first to share in the next breakout room. So now we're all back together, and I will have the moderators that are here tonight look for raised hands. We're looking now for a few raised hands to share in the big room so that Ambika and I can take turns giving you some feedback. So we have time for 2, maybe 3. Let's see. Do we have somebody with a raised hand? Oh, we have somebody with a question. NLB Sun. Can you come on and say your question, please?
Yes, good morning. Question is, when you write memoirs, right, do you write with the view that it's kind of, how put it, for a better word, egoistic journey? I mean the neutral sense. I don't mean the negative. It's about yourself and all about yourself and what happened to you. Do you think that is the way to go, or more of a larger issue of living behind a legacy, so that others, strangers, or whoever will read the book will kind of benefit from the read? What do you think?
So if you were to put your question in just one sentence, what would it be? Because there was a lot there, and I need to hear that again. Just what is the main part of your question, if you can, please?
Great. My question is memoir an egoistic writing process, or larger issue of sharing with others some life lessons?
A memoir can be very many things. We were recently discussing this in my writing class. There's such a debate over that. And I really like what Tucker Mack says about memoir and autobiography. What's the difference? Tucker Mack says, there is no difference. An autobiography is just an elitist way of saying that you're writing their memoir. Nobody can really write their whole life story from beginning to end. So a memoir focuses on a section of your life, or some segments, or a series of events that are kind of all linked. A memoir can be specific learnings that you've had, or cover a way that a family lived together, or Sandra Cisneros wrote The House on Mango Street, and she wrote just about her living experiences with the family on that house on Mango Street. Then there's Nancy Mears that did a memoir and a series of letters and essays. There are so many ways to write memoir. There's no wrong way. There's no right way. It's all the right way. Ambika, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I definitely do. It could be just a portion of time. It could be like the way I did it was I created essays about different happenings in my life. And then when I put it all together in a fiction story, it's actually a single day. But what it is a pair of people meet up and they get into one of those luscious conversations that takes you from the morning all the way through the night. And they told each other stories about their lives. So the stories of the life don't necessarily have to end up on the pages chronologically, because through conversation with characters, we can go back in time or even fantasize about the future. So it's really up to you. I suggest writing stories and then figuring out how they all knit together later.
Absolutely, Ambika. Absolutely. Maya Angelou wrote her series of memoirs on like 0 to 9. Now I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, and then another one for another segment of life, and another one. And one fellow, George, somebody, sorry, I can't remember his last name, wrote his memoir with baseball terms. He loved baseball, and he did it A to Z and took a term from baseball that started with each letter of the alphabet. And then that word just made him think of certain things of his life. And there was nothing chronological about his story, nothing at all. So there's so many right ways. I don't know if we answered your question or if you want to try.
Or confused you further.
Thank you very much.
Or maybe
Hello,
triggered you to
hello.
write something. But I want to
Hi.
hear some of what some of these folks wrote.
Yes.
Hi.
So let's see if we can get some examples.
Can you
I
hear
think
me?
so. Fine. Go ahead.
I'm writing journals a lot, but how do you think I should start sorting them out? Because there's a lot of happenings, life experience. How do I get started? Maybe you can advise me.
Just start, I think, would be what Ambika and I would both say, is just start putting it down on the page. And then you might do it the old-fashioned way of putting little separate pieces of what you think is separate all around you on the floor. And when everyone is away for the weekend, or when you're all by yourself, or when you take yourself away and go, this piece, I talk about a silver thread. There's a little silver thread from this piece that links over to this piece, because this piece is about my mother and me, but now this next piece is about how I became a mother. And so maybe those two pieces are linked. So just start, take pieces that you want to put in, take things that are interesting to you, and I'm betting they might be interesting to someone else. Don't question too much the first part. If you have got no writing yet, just start. And I think you were talking about journals. Journals are a great way. Do you want to share something that you wrote from this first prompt, and we can maybe give you some feedback and maybe some ideas about how to start with that?
Because I save it in my computer. But I mean, there's a lot of happenings, and sometimes I have dreams. When I wake up, I quickly write down all what I dream about before I forget. So it goes by so many years. I write so many journals, but when I start to sort them up, when I start to put it into an order, does it need to go by period or not necessary? When I start to group them in a category.
I guess it depends on what you want to do with them. I've had experiences where I took an old journal of mine on a vacation instead of a book, and I read that journal, and I let that lead me into many things, maybe drawing, maybe writing, maybe just contemplation. And anything can be inspiration, anything can lead us. And what you just said about dreams is spot on with the next prompt I'm going to be giving you all, because it actually was inspired by a dream. So I don't know if you, as an avid dreamer and dream journalist, have had dreams where maybe you met a character, but then they showed up in other dreams, or a scene where you find yourself back in a similar location in a dream. This is the kind of stuff from dreams that I think can easily turn into story. But anything, I mean, it could just be a glance from a character in a dream. Are we ready to give the next prompt, Rusti?
We're actually going to do a little bit more sharing now, where you're going to talk about flash fiction as a way into writing memoir, and I'm talking about things and poetry. Okay. So we might be able to answer some of those questions, and maybe we can have some of the Q&A at the very end, because we just, and some of your questions might be answered along the way. Put some questions in the chat. We'll ask the moderators to save the chat so that Ambika and I can look at it and possibly send answers to your questions to people later. So by all means, if you have questions that you're not getting a chance to ask here, put them in the chat. We'll ask them to save the chat, and we will have a look at that for you. So Ambika, take it away for your next.
Okay, so as I mentioned, I had a series of dreams a couple years ago where it was so vivid. And I have a habit, just like our friend was just sharing about in the morning, writing down my dreams that I had the night before. And that's usually my first journaling of the day. This one particular dream triggered a poem, but then the poem was a bit longer. And this is how I came to find out what flash fiction is. Flash fiction pieces, it could be written in the structure of a poem, but it has the kind of detail that we find in a fiction story. I mean, it could be a reality flash fiction too. It could be memoir, it could be truth, but we call it flash fiction because of the formatting. And it's almost like a micro short story or a macro poem. And I like the format. I got triggered into trying it out by listening to longer poetry or actual flash fiction by Yeats, as I mentioned earlier in the morning. And I just love the way he explains the environment and the sensations and feelings that really pull me in to the piece. And I feel like I'm in it. I'm in the location. I'm meeting these characters, but yet it's not long enough to be a short story. It's actually somewhere in between. So this could be a way to take your ideas, everybody, and not pressure yourself to have to go again, like I said earlier, you know, from A through B to C, because some of us aren't that structured. I certainly am not. I need to just let it all flow out. And sometimes I don't even look at it for a while. Then later I'll go back and I'll start to reorganize it. So that's where Rusti and I are really different from each other in how we approach the whole process. I just kind of run with it, and Rusti has a much more organized way. But what I want to inspire you to do is, if you've got kind of a chunk, maybe play with it and see if you can stretch it into flash fiction, where it's giving you enough information that the reader can follow along, get the environment, get the emotions, get the story, but that it's shorter than a short story, but longer than a poem.
Great, Ambika. I think I might try my hand at some flash fiction type realism memoir. I really appreciate that. I so love that we're different, because it's everybody has got their own way into writing a memoir. So each one of you could ask, how do I start my memoir? And if I could listen to you for a little while, I might be able to give you something specific just for you. So right now we need to be a little bit more general, but definitely I'm going to be looking through the questions when I can and get some answers back to the team at SUSS. So I want to talk to you now about how vignettes, short little teeny tiny pieces that are reality based, much like what Ambika is talking about flash fiction, but things like the Chicken Soup for the Soul is kind of like short little essays, but vignettes are what Sandra Cisneros did in The House on Mango Street, where each one was just like this page and maybe a tiny bit. Or in Randy Posh wrote when he was a professor at a university, can't remember where, and he wrote these short little pieces about his view on life when he found out he was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And his book is absolutely fantastic. That's Randy Posh, P-A-U-S-C-H, Randy, and it's a fabulous little book with short little pieces. So You can write a memoir that's actually some of your opinions about various things or the lessons that you've learned in life. Or somebody asked in the chat about how to write the biography of their husband. And I already said that my little opinion belongs with Tucker Max about how autobiography, biography, memoir are not really different. Just start with the things that you want your readers to know, because the reader is the real boss. Not me, not an editor, not the author, but whoever you're writing for. That's the boss. That's the one that will guide you in what you need to write. So if you're writing for the grandchildren, you can't exactly write in a way that is so inaccessible to them that they're not going to remember, or they're not going to know that once upon a time you didn't know who was calling in the phone because there was no call display, let alone a picture on the other end of the phone. One of our favorite speakers tells that story. So you'll want to write for grandchildren in a way that will keep them intrigued or interested. Those stories about how maybe your grandfather was for you and how your husband was a father to your children, you can compare those two and make it a little bit more real for them. So that's one really kind of roundabout general way to start writing a biography about somebody for the children. The other way that I mentioned earlier was about using recipes, because family recipes, the ways that we make things, are very unique and identifiable family to family. In our family, my mother had a dish that she would make, pluma at Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. Nowhere else would she make it. We had one cousin that was an absolute joker. When my brothers brought girlfriends home, he would tell them, "Oh, you're gonna love Aunt Mary's dessert. She uses plums, mice, and gravy." She had to learn how to use whatever she had on hand because she grew up in the Depression starving. He would scare away some of those not very hardy or gullible girlfriends that my brothers had. And then he would tell them they didn't deserve to be in the family anyway. If they can't take a joke or figure it out. So these stories that are part of your family history, they're what make your stories come alive. So listen for them, remember them, challenge yourself to kind of like, what was that grandma used to say? Write it in your journal. What was that I just wanted to have all the time when I went to her house? What was it that I wanted to play with, but she never let me play with it? So those kinds of things are the stories that you're going to be able to pin a life around. Those things. That is one of your ways to writing the memoir, is pick those little flash pieces, those little vignettes, even poetry. Poetry is a great alternative way to write memoir. Haiku, poetry, there's a lot you can do. And then there's the haibun. And the haibun, H-A-I-B-U-N, is a haiku and an essay. You could try it that way. There's so many ways to do it. Now we're going to go into our next writing prompts. I have my prompt here ready to put in the chat, and I'll share that, then Ambika will share hers. We're giving you a little bit of a longer one this time. Don't worry about capturing all of it. Just let it flow into your mind and out and down into the pen if that's what is leading you onto the page, or wherever your mind wants to go. Just write. I once wrote a blessing poem, had 7 blessings in it for somebody that I was so angry at I could spit nails like a machine gun. And the 7 blessings ended with, and may the rain end at night when you're in the tent under the stars and you have to go out and pee. I mean, a silly little blessing. But those blessings, people liked that poem. And I thought, oh, this turned out to be a good poem. And I just wanted to get some anger out. The other way that you can do this is then after that, I wrote a prose piece that was blessings on people that were so important in my life. The little old lady that lived across the road that served me tea and ginger snap molasses cookies that were as big as my face when I was a child. She made them in her wood stove oven. And I wrote blessings for her and a teacher that I loved and a sister and a best friend that I met at 50. So you can write a series of blessings for other people. You can write the blessings you had in your life. But that's my prompt for this time around. One thing from my own writing. Ambika, what's your prompt? I know it's a good one.
Fantastic. And in the breakout room that I was in just before, Rusti, we had a discussion about blessings. So how amazing and magical. that these discussions are jumping from room to room. I love it. This is an excerpt from a flash fiction piece, so it may seem like a poem to you, but this is what I was alluding to earlier. Our eyes stick, powerful magnets, pulling me into you. I float gracefully into your arms, a seed dancing on the wind. Your first kiss swallows me into you. I die, then awaken, resurrected. I want you beyond breath. And this is an excerpt from a flash fiction piece from an upcoming book of mine. So I hope it inspires you, and we look forward to interacting with you and hearing what you write from these prompts.
So 5 minutes, and then the moderator will put us in the breakout room where we'll share. So 5 minutes of silence, of writing. We'll see you in 5 minutes in the breakout rooms.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, once again, you will see a prompt. Please join the room. Please take note of the which room number you are assigned to, because in case you are disconnected, we can, and when you come back to the main room, you can tell us which room number it is, and I can put you back into the correct room. Yeah, thank you very much.
Again. Let me check if everyone's here. The assignment is all done. Okay, let me flash the prompt on the screen. Everybody see the prompt? Everyone can see the prompt on the screen. You see the two prompts? Can see give me a thumbs up. Okay, we will start to write 5 minutes. Okay, let's get starting. Let's write. Anything else?
Hi, Choi Ki and Kulin Tan. Can you advise which room you were in? Then we can put you back into the room. Thank you.
No more? Okay, can you get the next person to share? Any volunteers? Okay, no volunteers.
All right, welcome back, everyone. We are at the space where Ambika is going to speak on the writing practices that work for her. Then I will speak about how to establish routines, and that word that some of my colleagues say is like a not really nice word when it comes to creativity. I say that discipline does actually belong with creativity. You'll hear from Ambika more about the free flow and the writing practices that work for her. So Ambika, take it away.
I completely respect the idea of organization and the types of practices that Rusti is a master of. And if I was forced to do that, I probably wouldn't have written anything. But what I've learned to do is just create when the mood strikes. I was just telling my breakout room about when I wrote my second book. I had to interview half of this book out of my co-writer because he really wasn't a writer, but he had stories to tell and information to convey. And so what I did was I went and stayed at his house with his family, and we would go out for morning walks, and I would type in my smartphone while we would walk. That was before there was voice texting. Now that there's voice texting and I can have ear pods in my ear, I don't really even have to worry about looking at my phone. I can walk and talk and dictate to a robot, and it will take down everything I want. There's different apps. One of the apps that Rusti and I like a lot, because it can capture when we're talking or telling stories, is Otter, because it will take down a voice memo as a recording of your voice, and it will transcribe it. It's really helpful too, because if your words aren't coming out really clearly, and I know even if our phone is calibrated to what we're saying, still it can confuse words. So I use voice texting a lot. I might get an inspiration while I'm driving, and I've been known to pull over and off the road, or just wait for the next red light and put a little message down in a voice text. Back before that, believe it or not, everybody, I used to leave myself phone messages on my old voice recorder at home. I would call up and leave myself numerous messages throughout the day so that I could remember ideas. So I'm the type of creative person that does it whenever it strikes. I do have one habit, Rusti, you're going to be really proud of me. I do get up in the morning and I do write in my journal. Primarily I'll write dreams, but sometimes when I first awaken in the morning, I don't usually jump right out of bed. I like to kind of re-enter into this reality gently and slowly. And so I might contemplate a dream or just a waking idea, and then I'll probably go and write it down before I do anything else, before I meditate, before I go for a morning walk. Usually on those morning walks, I get a lot of ideas. And I'll wake up in the night sometimes and write. When I was working on my first book, I did that a lot. I would wake up in the night and just have an idea, or I couldn't go back to sleep until I went out to my computer and worked on it. I've got journals all over the place. You can see them on the shelves behind me. And sometimes I'll just sit and read through an old journal, and that will act like a prompt for me. So Rusti, share with us about your incredible organizational skills.
All right. Thank you, Ambika. So one of the ways that I really believe that we can be inviting the muse in to play with us is to have a routine, to be regular, to be committed to that routine and that time, to show up at a time in the day that is ours. And as we enter our golden years, supposedly we're supposed to have a little more time, but when I talk to other people my age and generation, we're all really still busy doing things and out there and living, which is great. So find the time of day that nobody calls you, that nobody interrupts you, whether that be later at night. Like my sister, she had 6 children. In order to get time by herself, she had to stay up late at night. For me, I had one son that loved playing by himself in the morning, and mornings have always been my time. It could be an afternoon at a coffee shop. Take yourself out regularly for an afternoon coffee shop date with your iPad. Dictate your phone like Ambika, or your journal. Just pick a time that is regular, because routine, the muse knows when you are showing up regularly. For years, I wrote morning pages, 3 pages longhand in the morning, and showing up every morning, it was great. And then I lost that routine for a while when I moved into a 300 square foot cabin with my sister. And we, you know, we're a little bit cramped, as you can imagine. And then I went and I house sat at my brother and sister-in-law's, this big house all by myself. And I said, that's it, I'm getting back into morning writing. I have to confess, I became addicted to my phone during that time with my sister. It took great discipline to leave the phone out in the other room and to not bring it into the bedroom at night and to not go get it in the morning and to write. And not only that, it took 3 weeks to write in the morning going, I don't want to write. Okay, write. I don't want to write. Write. It took 3 weeks to get back to that point where I was liking what I was writing. So really stick with it. Develop that routine that works for you. Give yourself little rewards, and do not go to that writing routine space empty-handed. Go there with a book. For example, Sue Miller, While I Was Gone. Just even the title, While I Was Gone, and then you can complete that sentence, While I Was Gone. Or you could write, While You Were Gone. Or you could write from the point of view of a cat or a dog or a child the first time they're without a babysitter or an older sibling or an older relative, while you were gone. Just those little bits of prompts that you can take with you to your writing time will keep you writing. Just write. And that discipline. Peter DeVries says, I write when I'm inspired. And I see to it that I am inspired every morning at 9:30. That's definitely for me, being a morning person. I'm an irrepressible morning person. My son says, whoa, slow down, it's morning. But he loves me just the way I am. And we all need somebody to love us the way we are. And we all need to love our words and trust them on the page. So at this point, I'd like to open it up for questions until the moderators will want to finish off the evening with some valuable information for you about library programs and what else is coming. So questions, anyone?
Rusti and Ambika, I'm going to post some questions in the chat for you to have a look. Then after that, we can open up to the floor. Okay. Yeah, I've just put the 3 questions.
That's a really good question, Miss Felicia. When I was writing Lilith and I was taking characters from my real life, I got a little worried about one of the main characters because I hadn't talked to him in a really long time. And there was some information I used about his family. And so I tracked him down and I got his permission. Did I have to do that? No, not really. I have a cousin who wrote a book about our family and he didn't ask anybody for permission. And it did cause a bit of a controversy. But for me, I looked for every single person that even remotely was represented in the book to ask their permission unless they were no longer living. I figured if they had transformed, it was on me to do right by the story. So in the case of my book, because it is fiction based on reality, I might have fictionalized some things about some of these characters, but then with this one main character, I was really worried that this was going to hang up the entire project. And I was so surprised that he said, you know what, go for it. I said to him, look, Donnie, I called him Donnie when we knew each other way back. I said, Donnie, I kept your first name and called you Donnie in the book, but I changed your last name. He said, no, you can use my last name if you want. And I thought, well, maybe not. So I went with the last name that I created for him, but I even sent him a signed copy of the book, and he and I reconnected. You know, we're friends again on Facebook because of it. So it's really up to you. I guess it depends. I mean, if you're talking about an unsolved crime or something like that, then there might be legalities. But if it's life happenings, it's really up to you. I don't think I don't know, Rusty, do you know anything different about that?
When we're writing about the truth about somebody that might not want to be written about, I teach my authors something I call inventing the truth, where we can change the gender of the person we're writing about. We can change the age and the year of the person we're writing about. We can distance it from ourselves. There was one mother and son that came to me that were writing the story of how she had given up her son for adoption when she was 17, and nobody knew in the small town, Alberta, Canada, that they were from. And then when she found her son, he had found out that it was partially kind of like a date rape in a small town community. So they wanted to write their story. They found each other when she was 17, he was 40. But they didn't know how to write about this part. And I said, well, in every small town, there's rodeos that would come to town around the time that you were born. And there are school dances and sports games that go to other schools. So it can be this chance encounter outside from a school dance in another town. Tell the story that way, so that because this man that was the father had only daughters, was an upstanding man in the area, people who knew the math, could do the math, would quickly determine it was him. So they thought, oh, brilliant. So changing just a few details so that you can still tell the truth, but you can mask the truth about the person that you may need to protect. You may need to protect yourself from slander or libel. You may need to protect somebody's reputation if that's still, if that's crucial to you and that person. So there are many ways to still write the truth, just kind of writing around it a little bit. I hope that maybe gives you an example. There was another question I thought was really valuable, is how do we encourage teenagers to write in a daily journal? That is a really good question. And one of the things that I like to do is, when I was a foster parent, I learned about when then. When you do this, and then we can do that. And that takes out the whole power struggle totally. So the other thing is that if you write, because, you know, teenagers, it's all about them, right? If you write something to them in a journal that is from you to them, because their journal needs to be separate, you need to honor their privacy above all. They can write anything in there. They can just come and flash it at you with the date that they wrote something. But if you write in a journal to them on the pillow, and then they have to, you know, take a blurred out picture of what they wrote in their journal with the date or something, so that they can show you that they had wrote something, you know, then you can do the when then. Because believe me, we even did that with the adults in my family. I went and said to my niece, when you do that, then I will make this for supper. And she goes, did you just when then me?
I love that. That's a great idea.
Yeah, it takes up the power struggle. So
also you could play games, you know. You could play a game where everybody starts a story and then you pass the books.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, everybody writes a paragraph and then you pass the book. So you can do that with drawing too. I saw a question of what do you do when you can't think of the right word? That's when a thesaurus becomes one of your best friends. And one of my favorites is Word Hippo, because just write the word that comes to mind. Or, I mean, you could put a question mark if you just can't find a word, but there's probably something, but maybe you might find that you're being redundant. Then you can go back and you can look for other words to describe it. And that can sometimes help flesh it out and give it more life. So Word Hippo is definitely my favorite thesaurus today. I have actual hard copy versions, and there's others I've used online, but I find that the way it is laid out, that you can get a lot of different ideas, and you can click on a word and it can take you to another page. And this helps a lot for me. How about you, Rusti?
Definitely, I am in love with the thesaurus, and also my son is a great thesaurus. He's like a word nerd in a family of word nerds where we actually read the dictionary. My mother would always send me to the dictionary when I was a child because she wanted to learn how to spell things, and I believe that's where I learned my natural affinity for spelling. So we are a family of word nerds.
Yeah, I grew up with a big dictionary too in our dining room.
There's another question I see here in the chat is, would like to learn more about how to prompt others to share their experiences, example, to write memoir on behalf of my mom. One of my friends really wants her mother to write her memoir, and I just sent an article that I wrote about how to get going on your memoir. I'm not sure that might work because my mother was very tight-lipped. So if your mother thinks that she doesn't have a story, or she doesn't want to talk about herself, because some are really incredibly shy about our lives, especially our older generation, they weren't really taught to put themselves out there. There was a back seat. So getting them to tell stories. Tell me the story. Tell me the story. Tell me my birth story. Tell me how you met Dad. Tell me, oh, what was the first fight you had with Dad? Because once you get them going in their stories, I bet you they won't stop. And just be there with a tape recorder or the otter.
Exactly. That's when Otter comes in real handy. Also, if you have a relative, especially an elder, definitely get them to tell stories. And it's really fun because so many emotions will come forth, and so many things you had no idea existed, but then you can also see them mirror into your own life. And this could even trigger more of your own memoir writing or whatever style of writing. I think, you know, Rusti and I are really into storytelling. So it's kind of a comfort zone and a second nature for both of us. And we love to listen to other people's stories as well, because we know it will trigger more of our own. I think it becomes kind of a weaving of energy. And just ask everybody to tell you stories. Ask little kids to tell you stories. They're incredible storytellers. And all of these actions will help to stimulate even more pouring forth from you.
Okay. Thank you very much for the sharing, Ambika and Rusti. It is really very insightful. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. And from the chat that we can see, seems like a lot of the participants actually enjoy this session a lot. And there are many requests to have future of such similar sessions to help them with their writing. I think it has been really great. If I may, I guess this brings us to the end of our session on Silver Voices Writing Your Memoir. A really big thank you to both our facilitators, Ambika, Devi, and Rusti, Lahaye, for your sharing. It has been really insightful, and especially for me as well. Okay. To the participants, I appreciate if you could kindly fill our survey, as this would be really very useful for us to improve our future events. Mingwei, you can go to the next slide. For those of you who are keen on our gerontology programs at SUSS, please do visit our website for more details. And please leave a like on our Facebook page to get the latest program information. Next, Mingwei. Now, we would also like to thank ActiveSG for your presence in promoting the health and well-being of our seniors. And to keep ourselves healthy and active, let's join the exercises together with ActiveSG. I will now hand over back to Mingwei for the formalities. Once again, thank you to Rusti and Ambika for your sharing. And thank you to all the participants for joining us, and have a nice day. Meanwhile, over to you.
Thank you, Shariman. Thank you, Shariman. Thank you to our speakers, Ambika and Rusti, for this insightful memoir writing workshop. And thank you to all our participants for joining us this morning. We hope you have gained something from it. We'll be having our final session of the event at 3 p.m. today, where you can hear from our panel of industry experts and professionals on how seniors can harness their voices to raise the collective wisdom society by sharing their knowledge and passion. Although registrations are closed, you can also catch them via live stream on our Public Libraries Singapore Facebook page. You can scan the QR code on the right side of the screen to follow the page. This session is part of the Time of Your Life Celebration 2020, and in conjunction with the 10th anniversary celebration of SUSS Gerontology Programs, jointly organized by the National Library Board and the Singapore University of Social Sciences. The National Library Board offers a wide range of services and a huge collection online, such as ebooks, e-audiobooks, e-magazines, and e-newspapers. While NLB mobile app lets you read or listen to ebooks, audiobooks while you are connected to the internet, you may download these resources with Libby so that you can enjoy them even when you are offline. Libby is a third-party app by Overdrive. For more information on how to use our NLB mobile app and how to download the ebooks and audiobooks with Libby app, you may scan the QR code from the screen or visit this website at mobileapp.nlb.gov.sg. So here is a quick view on how to search for an ebook from the NLB mobile app. All you need is an internet-enabled mobile device and My Library ID. So this is the front page when you log into the app. Look out for the search icon, which is located at the bottom of the screen here, and then enter the keywords and search. The result will show you a list of relevant ebooks, and if you wish to borrow an ebook from the list, tap on the title to view the title details page. And finally, select Borrow by tapping on the Borrow button at the bottom left corner of the screen. There will be a pop-up window for you to proceed to borrow the ebook. So to try our NLB mobile app today with My Library ID, you can explore more of our collection and enjoy the convenience in accessing our e-resources anytime, anywhere. And these are some of the ebook recommendations on memoir writing, which you can access from our ever-expanding collection of ebooks. So we have come to the end of the session. We would appreciate if you could give us your feedback on the session by completing this short survey at the following website. Or you can also scan the QR code on the right side of the screen to access the feedback form. So let's wait for 10 seconds for everyone to access the form now. And last but not least, you can also send your inquiries to 50plus@nlb.gov.sg. If you wish to sign up for our monthly newsletter for programs, you can send your request to this address as well. Thank you for joining us this morning. Have a good day.